The colony ship drifted in silence far from Earth, its engines low and its halls filled with shadows. Inside one of the cabins, a young boy sat beside his mother, his small hand clutching hers tightly. Her breathing was weak and her face pale, yet her eyes still carried love as she looked at him. She knew her time was ending, and she feared leaving her son alone in a cold and dangerous universe. At the doorway stood a figure, tall and graceful, her skin faintly glowing under the dim lights. She was not human. Her eyes shimmered like stars. Her long hair moved as if touched by a wind that did not exist. Many feared her kind, but the mother had trusted her. She had seen kindness in her that others refused to see. Now the mother's trembling voice broke the silence. "Please protect him," she whispered, her words almost fading into the air. The alien woman stepped forward, her movement silent, her gaze steady as she looked down at the fragile child. She knelt, lowering herself to the boy's level, and touched his shoulder with a hand that was both strong and gentle. "I will protect him with my life," she promised, her voice deep yet soft, carrying a weight of honor that even the boy could feel. The boy looked up at her with wide eyes, confused but comforted. He did not understand why his mother cried or why she gave him to this stranger, but he felt warmth in the alien woman's touch, a strange safety that wrapped around him like a shield. The mother smiled weakly, her heart at peace knowing her son would not be alone. Darkness deepened outside the ship's windows, stars like cold fire watching silently. The engines groaned, warning of trouble ahead, a storm of debris drifting in their path. The boy heard the alarms and clung tighter to the woman's arm. She rose, lifting him easily into her embrace, her eyes narrowing as danger approached. Crew members rushed through the corridor, some casting fearful glances at her. To them she was a reminder of old wars, of battles fought between species long before peace was signed. But to the boy she was no enemy. She was the one who promised to keep him safe. The mother's last breath faded as the cabin doors closed. Leaving her behind in silence, the alien woman carried the boy through the chaos, alarms blaring and lights flashing red. Each step echoed with tension, each corner filled with whispers of panic. She did not falter. Her promise bound her soul. She would not let harm touch him. The boy buried his face against her shoulder, hearing her heart beat like steady thunder beneath her chest. When the ship shook violently, metal screeching under the impact of debris, she held him tighter. A part of the ceiling collapsed nearby, sparks and smoke filling the corridor. She moved faster than human eyes could follow, shielding him with her body. The crew gasped at her strength, but none dared stop her, for they saw her eyes burn with unbreakable fire. Through the chaos she reached the safe chamber, a reinforced room meant to protect against disaster. She placed the boy inside and knelt once again, her face close to his. "Do not be afraid," she told him. "Your mother trusted me, and I will never break my word." The boy nodded slowly, still trembling, still too young to understand the weight of a vow made in the darkness. The ship shook again, lights flickered, and outside the safe chamber the world groaned as if tearing apart. She stood tall, her figure casting a long shadow across the floor. Her eyes scanned the walls as if she could see beyond them, searching for threats. In that moment the boy realized she was more than just a guardian. She was a warrior, a shield against the endless night. Silence fell for a brief second, broken only by the sound of his breathing and the echo of alarms. The woman looked down at him once more, her expression calm yet fierce. "Sleep if you can," she whispered, though her own eyes never closed. She would stand watch for as long as it took, until danger passed, until the boy was safe. And as the ship drifted deeper into the unknown, a promise made in the shadow of death bound them together, a human child and an alien guardian, tied not by blood but by trust. Neither knew what the future would bring. Neither knew the storms waiting in the years ahead. But one thing was certain. Her vow would shape both their lives, and destiny was already watching. The boy's childhood passed not in comfort, but in the shadow of survival. The colony ship had landed on a distant world, half wild and only partly safe. The humans built shelters, grew food in domes, and tried to make a new life, but the boy grew up different. For by his side was the alien woman who never left him. Her name was whispered with fear among the settlers. Some called her a guardian, others called her a curse. Her kind had once been enemies, and scars of war remained fresh in human memory. Yet she never answered their hatred with anger. She only stayed close to the boy, watching, guiding, and guarding. From the time he could walk, she trained him. Her lessons were not only of strength, but of awareness. She showed him how to listen to the wind, how to tell when danger hid in the silence of the forest. She taught him how to see tracks on the ground, how to sense lies in a person's voice. Her words were simple, but her lessons carried wisdom deeper than books. At first the boy resisted, for he only wanted to play. He wanted to be like other children, chasing each other in the fields, laughing without worry. But when wild creatures broke the fence one night, when claws scraped against walls and screams filled the air, it was she who stood before him, blades of light forming in her hands, striking down the beasts before they could harm him. From that night the boy looked at her differently. Fear was replaced with awe, and awe with a strange kind of love. He began to follow her lessons with care, repeating every move she showed him. He fell, he failed, he bruised, but she always lifted him again. Her hand steady and her gaze patient. Other children watched and whispered. They saw him learning alien ways, moving with silent steps. His eyes sharp like hers. Some laughed at him, calling him half alien. Some even threw stones when no adults were near. But the boy learned to hold his anger, for she had told him, strength is not in striking first, but in choosing when not to strike. Still, there were days when pain grew heavy. He would come home with torn clothes and bruises, his small fists clenched in frustration. She would kneel and tend his wounds, her long fingers gentle as she wrapped his arm. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark as she said, I promised your mother I would protect you, but I cannot shield your heart from pain. You must learn to rise, and he did rise slowly, year by year. His body grew stronger, his spirit sharper, shaped under her shadow while others laughed. He trained while others mocked, he listened. The bond between them became unbreakable, forged in quiet nights under alien skies. Sometimes he would ask about her world. She spoke rarely of it, but when she did, her voice carried both sorrow and pride. She told him of endless oceans that glowed at night, of mountains where storms sang like choirs. She told him of her people, warriors bound by honor, yet feared because their strength had been used in war. The boy listened, his imagination filling with pictures of places he had never seen. And when she spoke of loneliness, of how she was the only one of her kind on this colony, his heart ached for her. Years passed and the boy became a young teenager. By then he could run faster than most, fight better than any boy his age, and think with a calmness rare among humans. But it was not only her training that shaped him. It was her constant presence. She was always near, always watching, sometimes silently in the distance like a shadow that never left. Yet he did not feel trapped. Instead, he felt safe. Every time danger rose, she was there. Every time despair came, she stood tall. He began to understand that her promise to his mother was not just duty. It was something deeper, something she carried in her very soul. But the world was not kind. Whispers followed him as he grew, whispers that he was less human because of her. Neighbors questioned why she cared so much, why she lived among them, why she had not left. The boy heard it all. But when he looked at her, he saw only the truth. She had given up her own world to keep him safe. One night, under the twin moons of the alien sky, he asked her, why do you stay when they hate you so much? She looked at him, her eyes glowing like stars reflected in water. Her answer was simple, but it struck deep. Because I gave my word, and because you are worth protecting. The boy did not reply. But in his heart, something shifted. He realized that while others might see her as a monster, to him she was the reason he still stood tall. And though he did not yet understand the full weight of her vow, he felt that his life was tied to hers. Every step, every breath, every future moment carried the shadow of her promise. A promise made long ago in the darkness. A promise that had become the foundation of his life. The boy was 15 when the true tests began. By then he was no longer a child. His shoulders broader, his eyes sharper, his steps steady like a hunter's. Years under her shadow had carved strength into his body and discipline into his mind. But strength invites challenge, and discipline is tested only when chaos comes. It began with the whispers that turned to shouts. Other boys his age no longer saw him as weak or strange. They saw him as a threat. They feared his calm gaze. They hated the way he moved with grace not human, so they chose to break him, to prove he was not one of them. One evening after lessons, they cornered him near the old supply shed. Their leader, tall and angry, shoved him against the wall. You think you're better than us, the boy snarled. Walking like one of them, the others laughed, their fists tight, stones in their hands. The boy stood still, remembering her words. Strength is not in striking first, but in knowing when to stand. He tried to step away. But they blocked him. The first punch hit his jaw, sharp pain exploding, but he did not fall. The second kick struck his ribs, but he held his ground, silent, unflinching. Anger boiled in his chest, but he remembered the promise he had made to himself, not to dishonor her teaching. Still, when the third strike came, something inside him snapped. His hand moved faster than thought, deflecting the blow, twisting the attacker's arm until he dropped to his knees. The others gasped, fear flashing in their eyes. Before more could happen, the air shifted. A shadow fell across the group, tall, silent, unmovable. She stood there, the alien guardian, her glowing eyes fixed on them. The boys froze, their courage draining like water in sand. "Go," she said, her voice calm but heavy with warning. They scattered, leaving only dust and silence. The boy touched his jaw, tasting blood, and looked at her. Her expression was not pride nor anger, but something deeper. "Disappointment you held as long as you could," she said softly. "But you let anger choose for you." He lowered his gaze, shame burning in his chest. I didn't want to," he whispered. But they would not stop. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch steady, her voice unyielding. "Life will never stop testing you," she said. "The fire will always come, and you must decide whether it will burn you or forge you." Her words cut deep, leaving him silent that night as he lay in bed. He replayed the fight again and again. He realized that power was dangerous, not because others feared it, but because it was so easy to use. The test did not end there in the months that followed. Dangers outside the settlement grew. Wild beasts prowled the forest, storms tore down fences. Hunger pressed heavy on the people, and in every trial she stood near him, guiding him, testing him, shaping him. One day, when hunters failed to return, he asked to join the search. She allowed it, but only after making him swear to listen to her every word. They tracked footprints through the mud, following broken branches and trails of blood. When the beasts attacked, massive and snarling, he stood frozen for a heartbeat, then remembered her lessons. His blade moved not wild but precise, his breath steady, his feet planted. The fight was chaos, but her voice cut through it like light in darkness. "Left, now strike. Hold your ground. Watch your back." He obeyed, and for the first time, he felt not like a child under protection, but like a warrior fighting beside her afterward. As they dragged the wounded hunters home, she looked at him with quiet pride. "You are learning," she said, and those 3 words meant more to him than all the praise in the world. But even pride was another test, for pride can grow into arrogance. And so, when he smiled too long, she reminded him, "Do not mistake one victory for mastery. The fire is endless." Among humans, rumors grew sharper. Some said he was no longer one of them, that he belonged to her kind more than his own. They accused her of shaping him into something alien, of stealing his humanity. But the boy did not listen, for he knew the truth. Her vow was not to change him, but to prepare him. Yet deep inside he felt the weight of division. He was human but different. He was raised by her, but not of her kind, and he wondered, as the stars glowed above their small world, if he truly belonged anywhere at all. The tests of fire were not only in fists or claws, but in questions without answers. Every trial pushed him to the edge of choice, fight or forgive, hold or let go, and each time he looked at her, at the unshaken glow in her eyes, and found his path again. She was his shield, his teacher, his shadow, and though the fire burned him, it also forged him. But destiny was patient, and destiny had greater flames waiting. For the boy's greatest test was not from beasts, or bullies, or storms. It would come from the rift between their worlds, a rift too wide to ignore. And when that day arrived, no lesson, no word, no training could protect his heart from the fire to come. The boy was no longer a boy. Time had carved his face into that of a young man, his shoulders broad, his gaze steady, his spirit hardened by years of trial. Yet though he had grown, the shadow of his guardian still followed him. Her presence was unshakable, her vow unbroken, her eyes still glowing with the same fierce fire as on the day she made her promise. At first he was grateful. She stood at his side in every danger, her hand steady, her blade faster than any threat. But as he grew older, a restlessness began to burn inside him. He wanted freedom, to walk without a shadow, to test himself without her constant protection. One evening, under the twin moons, he spoke with frustration. "You never leave me alone," he said, his voice sharp. "I am not a child anymore. I can fight, I can survive, I can stand without you." She stood in silence, the wind brushing against her long hair, Her expression did not change, but her eyes carried a storm. "You are strong," she said softly, "but strength without wisdom is brittle, and pride can shatter faster than glass." Her words only fueled his anger. "I am human," he snapped. "I cannot live forever in your shadow. I must choose my own path." Her hand twitched, as if to reach for him, but she let it fall to her side. For the first time since he was a child, distance formed between them. He turned from her, and though she followed silently, he felt the weight of her watch like chains around his neck. The village saw this rift and whispered. Some said it was proof that no human and alien could truly walk the same path. Others claimed she had held him too tightly, keeping him from his people. In the weeks that followed, he spent more time with other humans. He worked the fields, repaired fences, hunted with his peers for the first time. He tried to live without her constant presence. He laughed with others, felt the warmth of belonging, but still in the silence of night, he remembered her glowing eyes watching over him. She too kept her distance, where once she walked beside him, now she lingered in the shadows. He saw her only at the edge of the village, standing tall, watching the horizon, and though her eyes no longer met his, he knew she had not stopped guarding. It should have brought comfort, but instead it brought guilt. He felt torn between two worlds, his people and her. His people offered him belonging, laughter, a place among them, but she offered him loyalty, strength, and a bond no one else could understand. One night, during a gathering, the young men asked him to share stories of training. They mocked her, calling her a monster, saying she had twisted him into something less than human. His fists clenched, anger burning, yet he stayed silent. But silence was not enough. He realized then that no matter what he did, the rift between human and alien would always pull at him. When he returned home, he found her waiting at the edge of the forest. "You are hurt," she said quietly, though his body bore no wounds. "It is not my body," he muttered. "It is my heart. I do not know where I belong." Her gaze softened, and for a brief moment she looked not like a warrior, but like someone carrying a burden too heavy to speak. "You belong where you choose," she answered. "But know this, whatever you decide, my vow does not break. Even if you hate me." The words struck deep, and he turned away, unable to reply. That night, he dreamed of his mother, her fading face whispering, "She will protect you." But in the dream, he also saw the woman's glowing eyes, filled not only with duty but with something more, something unspoken. The days passed, and the gap widened. He stopped seeking her guidance, stopped training at her side, stopped listening to her counsel. She did not chase him, she only remained at a distance, her silence heavier than any word. It was as if the bond between them had been cut, leaving him adrift, and yet, fate does not forget its promises. Danger came again, sudden and brutal. Raiders from the wastelands attacked the settlement, their weapons sharp, their voices filled with rage. The young man fought beside his people, blade flashing, heart pounding with courage and fear. For a moment, he thought he could stand without her. But then when the raiders surrounded him, blades ready to strike, he saw her. She descended like a storm, her eyes blazing, her body moving with impossible speed. In seconds, the attackers lay broken at her feet, and she stood over him once more, shield and savior. Their eyes met, and in that gaze was not only protection but also pain. The pain of distance, of words spoken in anger, of choices made in pride. He realized then that no matter how far he tried to walk from her, their lives were bound by something neither could sever. The rift between them was real, but it was not the end. For every world has storms, every bond has cracks, and sometimes it is in those cracks that truth begins to shine. And as the night fell after the battle, he lay awake, wondering if his path would ever truly be free from hers, or if perhaps his destiny had already chosen for him, long ago in the darkness when the promise was first made. Peace never lasts forever. For years, the colony tried to grow in silence, building homes, raising children, and tending the fields under alien skies. The humans wished only to survive, to live without fear, but far away. Old hatred stirred once more. Her people, the ones she came from, were rising again, and war returned like a storm across the stars. Whispers came first, carried by traitors. Skirmishes had begun, ships had clashed in the void. The treaty between humans and her kind was breaking, and soon the war that had once been history was alive again, its flames reaching even this small colony. The young man was no longer only a farmer or a hunter. When the call came, he stood with his people, weapon in hand, armor strapped across his chest. He was ready not because he hated, but because he would not let his home burn. Yet as he prepared, he thought of her, the alien woman who had raised him, the one who had sworn her life for his. Would she be seen as enemy now? Would the humans cast her out? Would she be forced to choose between the boy she had raised and the blood of her people? These questions haunted him, but answers came sooner than expected. The night the raiders returned, not simple thieves this time, but soldiers of her kind, armed with weapons that glowed like fire. The settlement walls shook as explosions ripped through the air. Children screamed, men and women rushed to defend, chaos spreading like a wave. And in the center of it he fought, blade in hand, his training alive in every strike. Every breath he fought not as a boy but as a warrior, holding the line while fear threatened to crush those beside him. Then, in the smoke, he saw her. She moved like lightning, her glowing eyes fierce, her body a storm of strength and grace. She struck down the soldiers of her own people without hesitation, shielding the humans she had once sworn to protect. Gasps filled the air. Humans saw her, alien blood on her hands, fighting for them, not against them. Their eyes met across the battlefield, and in that moment time slowed. He saw no doubt in her, no hesitation, only the same promise she had made long ago. Her vow had not broken, even when war tore their worlds apart. She fought as his shield, his protector, his unshaken guardian. But battles are cruel and promises bleed. An enemy soldier struck with a weapon that burned like molten fire, the blast tearing across the field. He stumbled, pain lancing through his side, his body collapsing onto the dirt. For a heartbeat, the world blurred, sound fading into silence. And then she was there, standing over him, her form a wall between him and death. She roared in her tongue words that shook the air, striking down the soldier who dared harm him. Her arms lifted him as if he weighed nothing, her steps sure even as fire rained around them. She carried him to cover, her eyes burning with fury and fear. "You will not fall," she whispered, voice trembling though her body did not. "I swore." "I will never let you fall," he tried to speak, but blood filled his throat. Only his hand reached for hers. In that touch he felt not only protection but something deeper, something long hidden beneath her silence. For the first time, he saw fear in her eyes, not fear for herself, but fear of losing him. The battle raged for hours, the settlement nearly torn apart. But with her strength and his courage, the humans held, the raiders finally retreating into the night. When the fires dimmed and silence returned, the wounded were carried, the dead laid in rows, and among the living she sat beside him, her hand on his chest, her face etched with grief and relief. "You fought well," she said quietly, her voice soft in the darkness. "You fought like one of my people, not because of rage, but because of honor." Her words should have filled him with pride, but instead they filled him with questions. What was he now? A human among humans, or something shaped by her, tied forever to her kind? That night, as he lay in the healer's tent, he heard the whispers outside. Some humans praised her, calling her savior. Others cursed her, saying she betrayed her people. The rift widened, not only between their species but within his own heart. For he could not hate her kind as others did, not when she had bled to save him. When dawn came, she sat silently at his side, her glowing eyes watching the horizon. The war was not over. He knew it was only beginning. And yet, as the suns rose, he also knew something else. He could not imagine fighting this war without her. For she was not only his protector, not only his shadow, but the fire that had shaped him. The war had returned, and with it came choices that would break or bind worlds. But deep inside he felt the truth stirring, a truth neither of them had yet spoken, that the bond between them was more than promise, more than duty, more than protection. It was something that even war could not destroy, though it would soon be tested by fire and blood. The war left scars on the colony. Buildings stood half-burned, fields blackened, and the air smelled of smoke long after the fires had died. The people buried their dead in silence, their eyes heavy with grief and suspicion, and in the middle of it all he recovered slowly, his wounds healing, though his heart felt heavier than his body. Through every night of pain she never left his side. She sat near his bed, silent as stone, her glowing eyes watching every breath he took. Sometimes he woke and found her head bowed, her hand resting on the floor beside him. Sometimes he caught her whispering words in her own language, prayers or vows he could not understand. When he was strong enough to walk again, they went together beyond the colony, into the forest where silence was broken only by the cry of strange birds and the rustle of alien trees. He stopped beneath the shadow of a cliff and turned to her. "Why?" he asked, his voice low. "Why do you fight so hard for me? Why would you turn against your people? Why would you bleed for a world that is not yours?" For a long time, she did not answer. Her gaze drifted to the sky, where stars faintly glimmered even in daylight. Finally she spoke, her words trembling though her voice was strong. "Because of a promise," she said. "A promise to your mother, and a promise to myself." He frowned, waiting, his chest tight with unspoken questions. Her hand lifted, fingers brushing lightly against his arm. "When I swore to protect you, I thought it was only duty, a burden to carry for the sake of honor," she whispered. "But as years passed, duty became care, and care became something deeper, something I could not deny. Even when I tried," his breath caught, his heart pounding. She lowered her gaze, for the first time in years unable to meet his eyes. "I should not say this," she continued, "for it is against my code, against the will of both our worlds. But the truth burns inside me, and I cannot hide it any longer." She paused, her voice breaking like glass. "I love you." The words struck him harder than any blade. He stood frozen, memories rushing through him, her hand shielding him as a boy, her voice guiding him through trials, her eyes burning as she fought to keep him alive. He had thought of her as protector, as guardian, as shadow, but now he saw it clearly. Every act of care, every moment of sacrifice had carried something deeper. His voice trembled. "You loved me." "All this time?" She nodded slowly, pain clear on her face. "Yes, but I waited, I buried it. I kept it locked inside because you were a child, and I would never cross that line, never dishonor the trust of your mother or your innocence." Her hand curled into a fist, her glowing eyes dimming. "I thought I could live with silence, but war reminded me that life is fragile, that tomorrow may never come, and I could not leave the truth unsaid." Silence fell between them, heavy and fragile. The young man's chest ached with confusion, for he too had felt something, though he had never named it, a bond deeper than words, a pull in his heart that grew stronger with each year. But fear had hidden it, fear of what others would say, fear of what it meant to love someone not human. He stepped closer, his hand brushing against hers. "I do not know what I feel fully," he admitted. "But I know this, you are not just my protector, not just a vow made long ago. You are part of me, and I cannot imagine a life where you are not." Her eyes widened, glowing brighter, her breath catching like she had forgotten how to breathe. "Do you mean that?" she whispered, almost afraid. "Yes," he said, his voice steady though his heart raced. "I mean it." For the first time in years she smiled, not the sharp, guarded smile of a warrior, but the soft, trembling smile of someone who had carried too much weight for too long. Tears shimmered in her eyes, glowing faintly as they fell like silver drops. "I feared you would hate me if you ever knew," she admitted. "But instead you give me hope." The forest around them seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them standing in silence, bound not by duty, not by promise, but by truth finally spoken. Yet even in that moment of fragile peace, they knew the world outside would not accept it. The colony feared her kind, her people would call her traitor, and love between them would be seen as betrayal on both sides. But love does not wait for permission. He reached for her hand, gripping it tightly, their fingers locking together. "Whatever comes," he said, his voice firm, "we will face it." She closed her eyes, holding his hand as if it were the only thing keeping her alive. For 20 years her heart had carried silence. Now the silence was broken and the truth breathed in the open air, a truth that could heal or destroy, a truth that would change the course of both their lives. The truth of her heart spoken at last beneath alien skies. The confession changed everything. The young man could no longer see her only as a guardian, only as a shadow from childhood. Her words echoed inside him like fire, burning away years of silence. But with the truth came a choice that would shape both their lives. The colony was restless. War had sharpened suspicion, and her presence, once grudgingly tolerated, was now openly questioned. Some demanded she be cast out, saying she was dangerous, saying she could not be trusted while her people fought against them. Others whispered that her bond with the young man was unnatural, something that crossed boundaries meant never to be broken. He stood between them, torn in two. His people's voices called him to loyalty, to stand with humans to cut ties with the alien protector, but his heart called him back to her, to the woman who had saved his life more times than he could count, the woman who had loved him in silence for 20 years. One evening she came to him, her expression heavy, her glowing eyes dimmer than usual. "I must leave," she said, her voice low. "Your people will never accept me, and if I stay, they will turn against you. They will see you as traitor, as outcast." He shook his head sharply, pain striking his chest. "No," he said, "you are not a curse. You are my strength if they cannot see that." "Then it is their blindness, not ours." She turned away, her shoulders tense, her voice breaking. "You do not understand. My people will come again, and if they find me here, if they discover what I feel for you, they will destroy us both." He stepped closer, his hand gripping hers tightly, refusing to let go. "Then let them come," he whispered. "We will face them together." Her eyes widened, her breath trembling as she looked at him. "You would choose me," she asked, "over your people? Over everything you know?" He held her gaze, his voice steady. "I would choose the one who never abandoned me, the one who carried me when I was weak, the one who promised my mother she would protect me, and the one who kept that promise even when it cost her everything." Tears filled her eyes, shimmering like silver under the alien moons. "You do not know what this means," she whispered. "If you choose me, you're no longer only human. You step into a bond that cannot be broken. Not by war, not by time, not even by death." He nodded slowly, his hand tightening on hers. "Then let it be so," he said. For a long moment, silence wrapped around them. The forest stilled, the night air heavy with the weight of destiny. Then she knelt before him, lowering her head, her voice trembling as she spoke. "In my people's way, to ask for a mate is to give one's life, one's soul, one's future. It is not spoken lightly, and once accepted, it cannot be undone." She lifted her gaze, her glowing eyes burning like stars. "Will you be my mate?" she asked, her voice breaking with both hope and fear. He felt the world stop, every memory flooding back, the promise in the darkness, the childhood under her shadow, the tests of fire, the rift of worlds, the war that returned the truth of her heart. And in that moment he knew his answer. "Yes," he whispered, then louder, his voice steady. "Yes, I will." Her breath caught, her body trembling as if the weight of 20 years had suddenly lifted. She rose, and for the first time, she allowed herself to hold him not as protector, not as guardian, but as equal, her arms wrapped around him, strong yet gentle, her forehead resting against his. In that embrace he felt not fear but peace. The storms of war, the whispers of hate, the doubts of both worlds, all faded in that single moment. For what mattered was not blood or species, but the bond forged in promise, sacrifice, and love. They were no longer human and alien, no longer protector and child. They were mates, bound for life. But peace was fragile, and as dawn broke, voices rose again in the colony. Some cursed his choice, saying he had betrayed humanity. Others wept in fear. Yet he stood tall, her hand in his voice clear as he spoke. "You may see her as enemy, but without her, none of us would be alive. She is my shield, my oath, my heart, and I will not let her go." Many turned away, but some lowered their heads, remembering how she had fought for them, how she had bled for their children. And though acceptance did not come easily, respect began to grow one step at a time. Still, he knew the greater battle lay ahead, not with his people, but with hers, for one day her kin would come, and they would not forgive her choice. Yet when he looked at her, at the fierce fire in her eyes, at the unshakable strength in her stance, he felt no fear, for she had promised to protect him. And now he promised to protect her, two vows bound together, stronger than war, stronger than hatred, stronger than time. And as the suns rose over the alien sky, they stood together, not as protector and child, but as mates, facing whatever destiny dared to come.